What's happening, fishing friends? I gotta ask you, do you ever wish you had a rig that you could fish a worm on, something like this that stays pretty snagless? Well, yeah, Debo, I think that's called a shaky head or a Texas rig, right? What if you could take that exact same rig and fish it through grass with a paddle tail completely weedless? Or set it up like a little hover rig, Demiki rig, forward-facing sonar rig, whatever like that around brush and fish it vertically. Or hop it up and down on a hard bottom like a fish feeding off the bottom. Well, we happen to be talking about a rig that you can make at home, the weedless darter head jig from Do It Molds. This is a mold I picked up a little while ago and it reminded me of one of those old worm rigs that looked just like one of these. That's what it looks like after you get it all put together, but instead of having the line tie up at 90 degrees, they had the line tie out here in the front, and I used to fish those a ton with a trick worm like this from the bank because they were weedless. You didn't have to worry about getting hung up. You could fish it nice and finesse. Well, now in the winter, I'll be making some of these myself. It comes with 5 sizes there, from an 1/8 all the way up to 3/8. These bottom two have been my two favorite, an 1/8 and a 3/16 for me to make for bank fishing. But if you're in the river or fishing deeper, it does show you the hook sizes they say to use there. I think I've used 1 on all of mine, but it gives you the 1 all the way up to 4. You can even modify these a little bit. I've done that in some of my past videos, but with it being that 90-degree hook style, it's the same ones you're using in your the Ned rig, the Midwest Finesse, if you have that one. Same type of deal there. It's coming up straight up off the top of it, so it allows you to fish it vertically like this, cast it out and swim it with something like this, or just bounce it off the bottom with a rig like that. Now, making this is super easy. It's one of those rigs that is really easy for beginners because you just put your hook in, drop the lead down into it, and you've got the whole thing already. You don't have to worry about inserts and all that. After you've done that, I do have a tip. I've showed you this before, but this is heat shrink tubing. Get some of this. This is the small size. I forget what it is. I'll link it below. But you put that on there, cut just a little tiny piece off, and you use a hair dryer. I've got a heat gun. Heat it on there, and it sucks down to it. It shrinks right down onto it. You can cut that little piece off, so that way when you go over to your powder paint, you can just dip all that down in there. Pull this off real quick, hit it with your heat gun to make sure there's not any points or anything sticking up, and you've got a completely covered nice jig head just like that. So this keeps it good and open, like you can see there, so there's nothing down inside the eye of that hook, so you don't have to use another hook point like this to break all that paint and stuff free from the eyes of them. There's no reason anybody should be selling jigs or anything, and this is a tip that I got from Kuda over at Jig Squad. Kuda, thank you for that. You put that on there and heat shrink that down. That way when you dip it, that eye is completely free. Takes like 2 seconds more, completely worth trying to chip the paint and all that out of there after. Okay, rig it. How do you rig this thing? Well, it's easy peasy as it can be, because it's just like doing a Texas rig hook. You take your hook, put it in the nose of the bait, go down just a little bit past the barb of the hook. Take that, spin it around. That's going to essentially be the belly of it. Then I always take my hook and lay it on the side of the bait like this and mark with my thumb where does it need to be. So like this one, right about there. So I mark it with my thumb, bend the bait, come up under it, and make sure I come completely straight out of the back of this. You can see this one has just a little line there where it's showing the middle of it is. You want to make sure you come completely out of the back of it straight. That way it all lines up and rides there perfectly nice, just like that. And there you go. You've got a nice straight little rig. This happens to be one of the Z2s. So this is like a Z-Man plastic that Strike King makes. But this is perfect because it holds up so well. So even when it rips through all this and stuff, when the hook point goes through, it's not going to be tearing up your bait. It'll last a long time. So something like that's great. One little modification I'll tell you about is when you rig it up on some of these swim baits, so like Rage Swimmer or Kitech, they're kind of bulbous, up front. Now you could certainly use a different swim bait that's not, but with this one, a smaller hook, I will take the bottom of it. You can see how that's slit. I just took my knife and slit the belly of that open, just like on these. These come that way. These are made that way, just like a fluke, the belly's split open. So I did that on the swim bait here. That way the belly of that hook has room to move and I've got more of a hook point. Otherwise, it would go to like right there. That's where the plastic is, and you can see there's not much of a gap to actually get that hook in. So split that open on the bigger plastics. It does help. And one more tip, something small like this, if you're doing like a, this hover rig thing, this is one of the Yum sonar minnows. Even if you're just, hopping this around docks or brush piles or whatever, using a little Mend It on any of these really helps a ton, because you can glue the front of that to this lead, the front of the bait to the lead. So like for example on this one, this is just a trick worm. I cut just the front of that trick worm off so it sits nice and straight, flush on there. You put a little bit of that Mend It on there and this will stick forever. It makes it last so much longer. Instead of ripping the head of that bait out, this part will stay on and this part can get all, you know, messed up back here or whatever. It's fine, but it keeps your bait on there and makes it last a lot longer too. So a little bottle of Minda helps. Now when it comes to a combo, what would I fish this on? Well, for me, the smallest one here, this little 1/8, nice little finesse size. I'm fishing it on a spinning rig, kind of my normal do-it-all spinning rig. This is the Dobyns Caden. This is a 7'1", 1/8 to 1/2 ounce, medium light, fast action. You can see there pretty much all this stuff here, little darter heads. Hey, like it's made for it. Shaky head, you know, all these things, perfect for this type of rod. And then, you know, your spinning reel of choice. This happens to be the Shimano Mirabelle on there. Some 10 to 15 pound braid is what I like to go to a fluorocarbon leader. So it would usually be an 8-pound fluorocarbon leader. And that's it. Nothing too crazy, just, you know, your normal spinning rod. Now, if I bump up to this larger 3/16 or 1/4 ounce or even bigger, you can go to a softer type of casting rod. So this is the SLX MGL, great for light baits. It's got the MGL spool. Really, I think the most underrated reel in the SLX lineup. Great little reel. And then a softer, now this is a cranking, it's the Guide Select, but these are not super noodly rods. More of like a soft, you know, moderate fast type deal. See, this is just a smaller 6'9". This is my smaller lipless and jerkbait topwater, but rated for 1/8 ounce up to 3/4. Something like this is perfect for that. I've just got some 10-pound fluorocarbon on here. So if I were fishing like the, you know, the 3/16 ounce swimmer or something like that, hopping this around grass edges, something like that, you can definitely go with something like this. Don't set it super duper tight because remember, these are still not gigantic hooks, right? This is just like a little 2-aught hook is, you know, all you've got on here. So you don't want to be 65-pound braid trying to rip this through the crazy stuff. It's a small hook, so you have to keep that in mind. But yeah, you can definitely fish on a baitcaster once you go up to it. Fits works and just well. Okay, and last up, how do you fish this thing? Well, it really depends on how you're rigging it and what you're around. If you just put a paddle tail on here, there's really not a wrong way to fish it. You can bounce it off the bottom, simply cast it out and reel it in. You can kind of yo-yo it, you know, let it fall, let it hit bottom, pick it up. You can slow roll it. The advantage to this, especially for bank anglers, is it's snagless, right? So if you get around wood or any of that stuff with an open hook like this is also the little do-it finesse head. Y'all saw me use this quite a bit this year. Really like this one, but from the bank you have to be careful because that hook's open and exposed. With this one, if I'm coming over wood or around dock pilings or anything I might get snagged on, you just don't have that nearly as much. Now with this type of head, I will say, like I said, you can fish it on the bottom, you know, that type of stuff. Just have to be careful if you're around real big chunk rock. If you look at these compared to each other, this is also the Midwest finesse, the do-it head that I talk about so much. These have saved me for bank fishing so dang much. You get snagged a billion times less than using like an open hook Ned rig. But this is a Ned rig hook that head that I made. You can see I put just a slightly heavier hook in here. A little bit bigger, a little bit heavier wire. If I'm fishing around real big chunk rock and stuff, I'm going to go to something like this because of that rounded head. This also tends to stand up like that, whereas this one, well, doesn't. So they're made for slightly different things, but that doesn't mean you can't use it for that. You can still throw this, you know, around smaller rocks and stuff, sand, anything like that. Grass edges, let it hit the bottom. Just be careful around like the real big chunk rock because you probably will get this snagged or wedged in stuff. And for the boat guys, you can fish this, you know, just the regular 90-degree head like that as your sonar minnow type thing. Damiki rig, you know, whatever all these people are calling it, but it's weedless. So if you're really fishing in and around a brush pile instead of having that exposed hook, you're just not going to get hung up with this one. So this is also a cool way to do that, you know, vertically fish it, vertical jig it, you know, even if you're from the bank on a dock or something like that, you know, with a brush pile that somebody's submerged off the edge of a dock, you could fish it that way. So number of different ways to fish it. It really is a versatile little rig. It's like a pre-weighted little Texas rig for you almost. And like I said, I'll link the mold and the hooks that you need to use for this below. Makes it super easy. If you use my link below, it tells the folks over at Do It that I sent you. That way they can say, hey, look, Debos people are coming over here. And right now through tomorrow, so through Friday, 12/1, they've got a ton of sales on this stuff. So it's like buy 6 jars of ProTech paint, you can get 20% off. They've got the blanks on sale, skirts, all kinds of stuff. So give the link below a check and see what they got over there for sale. So comment below, fishing friends, let me know, is this something you would use? Like I said, for a beginner, this is a super easy one because you put the hook in, pour it, and then you just powder coat it or paint it however you want. But powder coating, I think, is the easiest, and be done with it. Just remember, get some shrink tube. Thanks to Kuda for sharing that trick over at Jig Squad, because that keeps all the eyes clean and there's no excuse for a dirty eye hole. A number of different ways you can fish them. Comment below and let me know. Otherwise, I got to get the rest of this edited. Thank you all for watching. Love you. Till next time.